Welcome to Offscreen. This week we're reading Passengers by G.J. Pruss. Microscopic proteins/aliens ride human beings as passengers for their own personal enjoyment. Screenplay is based on a 1969 Robert Silverberg short story that won a Nebula Award. But the draft of the script that we have isn't dated, but we know it was written in the late 90s probably.
Yeah.
David Fincher was interested in directing for a while after Fight Club, but it appears, at least according to the internet, that interest has basically died down and there's no new news regarding the script.
Yeah.
So it's dead.
And we don't really know anything else about the writer, I guess, right?
Well, you said you wrote one episode of Tales of the Crypt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, his entire IMDb filmography is an episode of Tales from the Crypt.
He's a man of quality over quantity.
I guess. I don't know. I haven't seen the episode.
I assume.
Anyway, should I go straight into the summary?
Yeah.
Okay, here goes. Charles Roth, on his 30th birthday, finds himself in a job he merely tolerates and with a few friends growing ever more distant. To compensate for his less than satisfying life, he binge drinks, sleeping around with women, never committing to anything more than a one-night stand. It's because of his lifestyle that it takes Charles a while to notice when something is off. He's beginning to lose large chunks of time, not just the nights anymore, but whole days. But it's not until he wakes up with a woman's brooch sticking out of his bare back that Charles finally sees a doctor. Upon examination, the doctor tells Charles that he's become a passenger, a host to tiny conscious particles who will occasionally take him for a ride. From now on, for the rest of his life, he'll suffer from these episodes, losing his free will and his memory for days at a time. It's a condition known among the medical community, but largely hidden from the public until they reach a better understanding of it. In the meantime, it's mostly written off as madness or ascribed to drug use. There's just one thing different about Charles's episodes. He remembers some of them. Specifically, all of the ones involving a certain woman he met while being ridden in Central Park. Ever since then, he's had glimpses of them together in places throughout the city, even sleeping together. They find each other again, this time while conscious, at a clinic, both of them seeking an experimental new treatment involving spinal injections. Turns out she's a passenger too. But Catherine, that's her name, doesn't remember Charles at all. All of the time they've spent together, they were being ridden. Charles doesn't let on at first, pretending that they've just met. The two begin dating, and he learns that Catherine is a single mother whose first concern is for her daughter. She's actually set up cameras all over the house to help detect when she's having an episode. Then Catherine has a nanny on standby to take care of her daughter until she wakes up again. Charles's place, by contrast, is a bit of a mess. As things begin to get more serious, he brings Catherine home with him. She notices the decorative brooch still sitting out in his bedroom, and, recognizing it as her own, is horrified by the thought that they've already slept together without her knowing about it. She accuses Charles of being a trailer, someone who follows and preys on passengers to take advantage of them while they're being ridden. Catherine splits, then promptly has an episode. They're sometimes stress-induced. By the time Charles catches up with her, she's nearly drunk herself to death on vodka, naked on the street outside a bar. He takes her home once more, even tying them together so she won't be able to leave his sight. When Catherine finally snaps out of it, she appreciates the gesture. They give the relationship a second chance, and, like Charles, she even comes to remember their first meeting while mutually ridden. He wasn't preying on her at all. In fact, neither of them was in control of themselves when they first met. Perhaps it was just fate. There you go.
Yeah.
So, we should mention right off the top the really weird thing about this script.
Yeah.
It's written entirely in the first person, which I had heard. I think maybe you told me that, and I assumed, it's just like Enter the Void type thing. You know, it's all first person. Enter the Void's weird for other reasons, but I didn't realize that, like, actually the descriptions and everything in the script itself are all written in the first person.
And the movie's more or less, movie's not like Enter the Void, and that Enter the Void was seen from a first person point of view of the character.
Most of this is, though, isn't it?
But I don't think. Do you think the intention was it for it to be shot like
Yeah,
Enter the Void?
I think it's supposed to be shot first person, except there were a few moments which, interestingly, are the ones where he's being ridden, and he's like having an episode that those I think it describes as being like an out-of-body sort of experience where he's seeing himself from the outside, but I think it made a point of saying that because all of the rest of it is actually shown from the first-person point of view.
Interesting.
I think. I mean, I don't know what the
that makes it more
consensus view on that is, but that's how it came across to me on the page.
interesting.
But it's hard to tell because
that makes the first-person choice purposeful, which I didn't really necessarily take it to be that, like anything more than like a gimmick initially.
You mean a writing gimmick or
a
like
writing gimmick? Okay.
Yeah. No, yeah, I thought it was going to translate on screen into being all first person, but I guess we'll never know now.
No, but that's really interesting.
Yeah.
If that is,
but like
the intention, and that kind of makes sense. Like that seems like something that Fincher would be potentially drawn to.
Yeah, I suppose. I wanted to just like read a little bit of the very beginning, if I could.
Go for it.
To give an idea, because it's almost like poetic at times.
Yeah.
We get at the very beginning just a bunch of glimpses of like the city. It takes place in New York, and so they're just like a lot of, here, I'm just going to read part of this. So it says, on the sidewalk, Chinese joint, ducks hung by their necks in the window, surrounded by neon, blinding, humming, dizzy. Falling forward onto the sidewalk, looking up at the fisheye pedestrian safety mirror at the entrance. A man's face, warped by the mirror, looking like he's been through something rough, and his breath steams over the image of his face, and shit, that's what I was afraid of. That's me. Blackout. That's the end of the very opening of the script, which was pretty interesting.
And it really throws you into it. It's very, very visceral beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely like intriguing and fun to read for that reason, even if it is just kind of a novelty, which wears off a little bit later, but it doesn't, like, it still functions perfectly as a script to me, the reading of it, the pacing of it, like primarily the reason, the whole point of screenplay format and the way it's written is so that it comes out to be about a minute a page. Mm-hmm. I feel like it would still be that. I feel like it still came out about right. Yeah. Which is impressive.
Yeah, it didn't seem like, I don't know, overly long or particularly short.
There were plenty of times where you are a little more in his head than we would be able to get watching the movie, and he's saying things that he's only thinking and not...
Right, things like that wouldn't translate. There's one towards the end where he's like... He says, and it's not in dialogue or anything, that like the second most common form of death for people that are being ridden is like a heart attack caused like from the minute they come out of it or something.
Right. It's like a little interesting trivia tidbit about passengers. They don't die doing all the crazy stuff that happens to them while they're being ridden, but they mostly die when they're snapping out of it. But anyway, what did you think overall?
Overall, I'm pretty mixed. I thought it was a really compelling read. It read fast. It went to some dark places.
Yeah, very.
It was maybe, I don't know about like all of its conclusions. It's maybe a little pat in that like the passengers occupy him because he is afraid of love, is what the doctor says.
I forgot that was like his diagnosis exactly, but that is a little dubious. I think it was more interesting. There were some other implications they said about love and being a passenger that I thought were more interesting. Not that it made him more susceptible to the passengers, but the fact that once he was a passenger, they kind of forced him to be the kind of person that was more loving because he had to be like able to roll with things
sure. Okay.
That I think was like the bigger point that I took away from it was that he has this friend who is also a passenger who kind of philosophizes with him a lot, and the gist of it seems to be that you kind of gotta roll with the punches, and if these parasites are trying to get you to do stuff, the best way to live with it is to kind of accept it and like try and
embrace your lack of control over it.
Which is an interesting point to make. And when you're in love, that's not in your control. It's just the emotion sweeps you away, right? So it's all kind of a sort of metaphor for love.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a metaphor for a lot of things. Like being ridden, like, is kind of a metaphor. Like how it manifests is like for mental illness or for drug abuse or for any other number of things.
They begin to make an interesting comparison to AIDS at one point that they kind of dropped. But actually, when he was being ridden at one point, wakes up after just having slept with a guy, and he's like really disgusted by that, and then he's like complaining to his friend.
It's kind of messed up that like that's what it takes for him to like go to the doctor.
No,
like,
it was
that's
before.
What it takes for him to.
But he was complaining to his friend like, I got to get like a blood test now. It's like, okay, wow.
Okay, buddy, you've already established as having slept with like hundreds of women.
But they were also comparing how, that whole philosophical outlook of being able to live with it. They made a pretty explicit, I think, comparison to living with HIV and how it's something that is like treatable, but it is going to change your life.
Yeah.
It's just change the way that you see things and do things forever.
And I think that can also, I think it definitely kind of went down the path of like HIV, but you could also say the same thing about mental illness, like in that it's not curable necessarily, but manageable. So I think it kind of circles around these things and then doesn't necessarily commit to one, which is fine.
Yeah. I like
to be like a one-for-one metaphor.
Yeah, I liked most of those, and I think at the end of the day, this is something that I have come around on myself, and I forget if we've spoken about this outside of the podcast, but in my own writing, I used to strive to have a very clear message or a point I want to make, but the more I read screenplays and the more I write and read books and everything, the more I think that really the best you can do is just lay out a lot of ideas and let people make the connections for themselves, and they're not going to draw the same conclusions or get the exact message that you want to like teach them or the lesson or whatever, but you just got to be able to like draw comparisons between things and raise questions, and that's as long as you can get that across, I think that's about the best you can do.
Keep people thinking,
and I think this did a good job of that. It gave you lots of ideas to play with and things that could potentially represent, or that these parasites could represent. Or even just like really mundane things. Like there were lots of points in the story where he's just riding the subway or he's walking through the city and he sees someone and he assumes they're being ridden. Now that he knows what it's like to be a passenger, he assumes like, oh, they're just going through the same thing. But it's hard to tell. At a certain point, it just becomes like a blurred line of like, okay, well, is this person like a passenger? Are they having an episode? Or are they just like in a really dead-end job and like a really boring life and following the motions. So it could be applied to a lot of different things.
Definitely. And we should note, or it's worth saying that Charles too he wasn't in a dead-end job. He was very successful and very wealthy.
Right.
But it was a job that provided like no deeper meaning.
No
for
stimulation,
him.
really. Yeah. I didn't really go into that, but I couldn't even tell what his job was from the script, barely. It was like some kind of consulting. They were like doing like technology consulting or something.
Yeah, it seemed like some sort of consulting.
But he got paid very well.
Right.
But he just didn't care for it. And I think, and this is another thing that wasn't super clear to me, but did he just straight up lose his job, or did he just get demoted or something? Like,
I think he got fired. His stuff was in a cardboard box.
That came so late, though. I was surprised. That was one thing I was going to remark upon, was that he holds this job down for a long time when supposedly he's losing like days at a time. Right. I don't know how. I mean, I wish I had a job cushy like that, where I could just like not show up for a while.
Yeah, and we're given the sense that it had been going on like before, right? Before the screenplay starts. Like the beginning of the screenplay is an episode, right?
I guess so, but yeah, I was led to believe that he probably had just started having them. I guess I
Yeah, I
don't
guess
know
that's
for sure,
probably
but
true.
the point is that I thought the point they were making was, he'd been living a life where it would have been hard to tell.
Not too dissimilar, right? Because his boss says, like, Charles, do we need to get you into rehab or something like that? He says that
Yeah,
very early on.
that was kind of cool. I
And he
love
kind
that.
of
Like,
says it jokingly, like, that's just a lifestyle that these people live.
yeah, exactly. That was really, I thought that was cool.
It felt like it had a really solid sense of place to me, which I, obviously appreciate.
Yeah, yeah, it had a lot of specific references to streets and landmarks.
Mm-hmm. I liked also how it would kind of jump. Like, I think this is like a Godard thing, where it would get into scenes late and leave them early.
Okay. I noticed it leaving early. I didn't notice it getting started late necessarily.
So, like, I feel like it wasn't always the same continuity that you would find in most scripts from scene to scene. And that kind of mirrors his own disjointed perspective.
Yeah, definitely lends itself to that. But that was also another signal to me that this was supposed to be done in first person. Because to me, I feel like that's how you would have to do it if you were making a movie entirely in the first person. You would have to cut abruptly a lot from place to place because you're not going to actually show him like walking all the way down this hallway and then unlocking the door and like doing all these little connecting mundane things. So
it kind of felt like it insisted upon the whole, like, if he falls in love with this woman, or if he falls in love with a woman, then his life will, like, somehow have meaning now.
Yeah, I guess.
I
know what you mean.
Like, he was in love with this woman, but he never met her.
Yeah.
Like, he had a vague hallucinatory, like, recollection of
them doing
having
it.
sex with her, yeah.
But it was really good. It's like really,
It
really
was
good.
apparently so good that someone lost a finger.
No, actually, I almost put that in the summary, but then I took it out. But that wasn't her finger.
It wasn't her finger.
It wasn't Catherine's finger.
And this is like the twist at the end. There's just another woman who presumably we're supposed to take. She's a trailer.
That was stupid, though.
That was kind of an unnecessary turn at the end.
Yeah.
Twist and turn at
so
the end.
yeah, like okay, there's that
explain?
like yeah, there's like that brooch, which is like a decorative little lapel pin type thing that he wakes up and it's like stuck in his back, and that belongs to Catherine. I explained all that, but at the same time, when he woke up with that thing in his back, he also found just like a severed finger in his kitchen on the floor, and
he thought it was a strawberry at first.
I don't know how you make that mistake, by the way.
Maybe the fingernail is painted green?
I don't know.
I don't know. That's weird.
I guess it would have to be really covered in blood. It would be really red. That's true. Anyway, so you think for the longest time, he finds out who this finger belongs to. He's going to find the one he's been looking for, this girl that he slept with and has been hallucinating about. That's originally why he sees his friend, Sai, who is like a photographer / he's into a bunch of weird stuff, but
he's the dude that takes the pictures for the police.
Yeah, like
There's a name for that, but I'm forgetting.
I don't know, but he works for like the morgue or whatever, I guess, and so he has access to people's fingerprints.
He's basically like Dexter.
Yeah, I guess kind of. So anyway, Charles gives him the finger, but he's not able to identify it, so that's kind of a dead end, and then it just like drops. He's just carrying this severed finger around for like half of the script. He has it in like a Dixie cup full of ice. He has it in like a Ziploc bag.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, and you don't really know why, because that's even after he's already learned that he's not going to be able to fingerprint it. He's still carrying it around. But anyway, yeah, you learn at like the very end it just belongs to this other random lady who's been kind of following him around. She's like one of those trailers,
well,
I guess.
She was initially following her.
Yeah, well, I guess she was following
Catherine.
Catherine.
He first meets her when he actually finds Catherine for the first time.
Right.
And he follows Catherine home, and the blonde woman is right next to him.
Right.
Turns out.
Yeah.
But it got really dark.
Yeah, there's some really pretty nasty stuff in there.
The whole... Like, at certain points, being ridden is kind of equated with being raped, and it is, right?
I mean...
Totally.
Yeah, sometimes
in
you
a way.
Actually literally could be. That's basically what trailers are doing. I mean, that was my first...
Oh, right. The trailers are, like, conscious. rapists.
Yeah, basically.
But like,
but also, yeah,
the person that is being inhabited by the passenger
are kind of like being
yeah, like they're being invaded. And then there's a later point where Charles like considers being a trailer, like considers like raping someone basically.
Yeah,
he entertains that idea.
That was right after I think he split up with Catherine.
Right after
he was in a very dark place.
That's no excuse.
No, certainly, but that was I think part of his like low point in the script.
Right.
What did you think about the ending though, and like the way, like, okay, so Catherine says at one point it's her dream to just like live in the country, and I guess it would be more of a low stakes way of like dealing with her condition, and she just wants to be able to like cope and relax in a place that, I guess if she's in the countryside she can't get into that much trouble. I don't know if that's the idea, but
they really romanticize like the countryside compared to the city, and also like their nuclear family that they're creating for themselves.
That's more so what I was talking about. Yeah,
like that as like a cure-all for not necessarily that they wouldn't have these episodes, but that together they can get through anything because they're now this strong family unit.
That's what I had a problem with, I guess.
Which
you explained it better.
Seems a little trite to me.
Yeah.
Or just like naive. I don't know.
I mean, what if they both have an episode at the same time?
Right. It kind of glosses over all of the potential bad things that could happen. Or just the fact that, I mean, yes, they've like gone through a lot together, but they don't really know each other well.
Have I been using the passengers word the wrong way this whole time? Is the person themselves the passenger, or the little particles the passengers?
I'm not 100% sure. I assume that the particles were the passengers, and they were inhabiting the host or whatever, Charles, Catherine.
Okay, because I could see it both ways. I could see it where, yeah, like the particles are riding these people, and so they're the passengers. But I could also see it as like, if you're a passenger on a train, for instance, you're just going where it takes you.
But I see it the other way because the passenger gets onto the train.
Yeah, but
I mean, I don't think it was ever unclear like what you meant or what you were saying.
Okay. Anyway,
you can always overdub it or dub over it.
Okay, but if the particles are the passengers,
yeah,
does that mean like, do Charles's passengers want to get it on with Catherine's passengers?
I assumed that it was always different passengers.
Oh, interesting. I thought it was the same passengers, but okay. I thought it was like this, the same passengers are always on you, but they just sometimes let you do your own thing. But I guess you're right, it makes more sense. It makes simultaneously more and less sense to me if it's not the same passengers every time.
I feel like they just hit it and quit it.
Yeah, well, if that's the case, it explains the isolated episodes. Mm-hmm. But then, like, why do they keep coming back to the same person, and why are certain people just unaffected?
I don't think it says.
Maybe there's like a Yelp for the passengers to use to say like, hey, use this guy.
This guy.
So that's why it's like always the same few people that are getting ridden.
Yeah.
Anyway, should we get to the verdicts?
Like the screenplay really insists upon like the fact that if they're together, everything will be all right, which is a little underwhelming given what comes before it. But yeah, sure, let's get to the verdicts.
Okay, I thought that was you explaining your verdict.
Well, okay, in that case, I'll continue, and I will say that yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting. I think, especially now that you made me realize that they probably intended it for it to be shot first person.
That's speculation, but
it seems perfect. It seems really reasonable.
It makes sense. Yeah.
And that just makes the whole concept, the whole conceit, more purposeful. So I would give it a consider, definitely, like a strong consider.
Okay, for the script.
For the script and for the writer.
Okay.
I thought it was well written. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I don't know if like the novelty, we used that word earlier. I don't know if the novelty of the first person thing goes as far for me. It's interesting. Like, it makes me think a lot about writing something as purely a screenwriter and like versus writing something that you know yourself you want to make. And it means less to me for a writer that is purely a writer to make that choice to do something entirely in the first person. It feels, if that's the case, it feels more like he's doing it for the novelty and like to get noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you were writing a script for yourself, you would only have yourself to impress, and you would know that you were going to do it, and you were going to back it up if you really want to make a movie like that. I'm not saying it was just an attention-seeking device, but I do think it loses a little something for me just knowing that.
But if it is it still like maybe a smart play? Like,
well, it is.
That really distinguished the screenplay from the hundreds of thousands of other ones.
True. But I guess that didn't ultimately make the difference because this guy is totally off the map now. But anyway, it's still that takes away from it a little bit for me.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, it also, and I think I might have talked about this before in one of the other episodes, but it does raise interesting questions about whether the screenplay is a form or like an art form in and of itself, because there are so many things in here, like I said, that would be lost when it was actually made into a movie. Just like nice little commentaries and internal things that are in the action lines but would never be actually said in the film. So that's interesting, and I like that to a certain extent. Anyway, this is all a long way of saying, though, that I don't think I would consider the script necessarily. Maybe I don't know if I would even consider the writer. I guess that's maybe what I'll do. I'll pass on the script, consider the writer.
Okay.
Because I don't think it would be that exciting of a movie to watch, to be honest. I think it's conceptually very interesting, which, again, that's pointing me more towards the writer himself. Is like, if he can come up with good concepts, maybe we'll do something else. Maybe he should write something else. But this particular script is really interesting conceptually. I don't think it would be super exciting to watch. Maybe
well articulated.
Okay, maybe if it was all first person, that would be a more interesting reason to watch it. But even then, most of all we're going to be seeing is like people talking and walking around and like occasionally getting into some shenanigans and fighting and drinking and stuff. But like, maybe
I was doling out too much praise. I don't know. I think I would still consider.
Consider both. Is still like a pretty tepid choice. So
no, consider's pretty strong.
I mean, in script coverage world, I suppose, but
yeah, you're right. Like, you saw Enter the Void.
Yeah,
like that movie, it wore out its welcome for me pretty.
Yeah,
and it was kind of one note.
The end, I felt like it was really reaching to keep it interesting by doing a lot of really sensational, ridiculous, really psychedelic, trippy stuff.
Oh, I don't really recall. I don't really remember, but
that I took that as a sign that it was not able to sustain the interest of a first person and continuous shot movie or story. But anyway,
that's a good point.
Because that's a whole other game they were playing. I mean, first of
all,
was
it a one-shot movie?
Yeah, it was all continuous, and it was actually a ghost, like a spirit type thing, which meant that it could float around anywhere, which definitely helps.
Yeah,
that helps them get away with that whole conceit. But anyway, so there you have it. Next week, we're reading a script called Pierre Pierre. A self-indulgent French nihilist attempts to steal the Mona Lisa and resell it for the money to move out of his parents' basement.